Hi, and welcome to the vlog. This is going out specifically to you if you are a parent, a teacher, an aunt, an uncle, or you work in some way with youth. Over the last 8 years, I've been working with youth from across North America, and I've had this need, this insight inside me that I've been playing with and trying to figure out how to express and trying to decide if it was appropriate even to express it. And finally, after a lot of debate, I've come to the conclusion that the world needs this, and so I'm going to share it. And you play a big role in this. Here it is. I think that we are letting youth get away with way too much. I think we are being way too easy on teens. I think we are coddling them. I think we are trying to make them experience success when they haven't earned it. I think we're trying to prevent them from experiencing disappointment and failure. And worst of all, I think by doing all of those things, we're doing them a disservice. I think we are crippling today's youth to the point that when they reach adulthood and go into the workforce, they are in for some nasty surprises. Now, what do I mean? Well, just to give you one example, there's been a trend in education over the last several years to move away from numerical marking. We've gone into this comment marking type system. If you have a child in elementary school, you know what I'm talking about. We used to get report cards that had numbers for grades on them, and those days are gone. Now elementary kids come home with a report card that has a series of comments about their performance. And I'm not here to debate whether we need to, have quantitative versus qualitative measurements, and there's maybe nothing wrong with comments per se, but it's just one example of a trend where we're being less concrete about how we evaluate young people and how we express standards of what we expect from them. Because along with this whole comment system has been this movement of what we call social promotion in my part of the world, which basically means that in order to help teens socially develop or young people to socially develop, we want to keep them with students in their age bracket, in their age group. And so essentially, there's a policy, written or unwritten, that says students don't fail grades. If a student is really struggling academically and the parent and the teachers agree that they should be held back a year, then that can happen. But by and large, failing a grade doesn't happen anymore. Students are simply moved along in order to be socially promoted, in order to stay with their peer group. And I think that just sends a horribly dangerous message to young people. Because what does it tell them essentially? Essentially, it tells them, and if you think that kids can't figure this out, you're wrong. It tells them, it doesn't really matter what my performance is, I still get to have the reward, right? I still get to move on, I still get to grade, and it doesn't matter whether I work hard or I don't, because the kid who gets 95 and the kid who gets 45 both move on. And I think that sets a very dangerous precedent for teens. And that's just one example of many. Where instead of forcing students to rise to meet the level of expectation, we've begun to lower the bar of what we expect. Right? We want students to succeed. And so if we want students to succeed, we have two choices. One, help them rise to meet the challenge, or two, bring the bar down to where they already are. And I believe more often than not, we're doing this instead of lifting them up. And I think that's cheating them. I think we're coddling kids. I think we're allowing their lives to be far easier than they need to be. We're not preparing them to cope with reality. And I think of the example of one of my speaker friends named Alvin Law. Alvin was born of a mother who took thalidomide. And those of you who don't know thalidomide, it was a drug given to pregnant women in the 50s and 60s to prevent nausea. And unbeknownst to doctors, it ended up causing severe birth defects, and they ended up canceling the drug. But not before many babies were born with these birth defects. Alvin was one such baby, was born without arms. What would it must have been like for his parents? If you're a parent, think about when you were watching your child learn to walk, right? And how they stumble and how they take a couple of steps and they fall down. And think of how many times they fell forward and, they put their hands out to stop themselves from banging their face on the ground. Now think about what Alvin must have done. Sure, there would have been times he would have toppled backwards and landed on his bottom and no big deal. But there would have been times when he tipped forward. And without arms to break his fall, he would have fallen on his face. And he would have done it more than once. And his parents would have had a choice of following him around and trying to catch him every time he fell, which is what many parents today would do. But if they did that, he would not have learned how to walk. And so they must have watched him and allowed him, probably with cushions on the floor, to fall on his face over and over and over again. And to some parents, that would just be horrifying. But they understood the long-term results of allowing that to happen. They understood that in order for Alvin to function in the real world, he had to be treated like a real child. They understood that in order for him to be effective as a human being, he needed to be able to do the things that human beings can do, one of which was to learn how to walk. And today, Alvin lives a life that, barring a few adjustments, is exactly like everybody else's. Right? He travels all around the world speaking, he flies planes, he drives cars, doesn't fly his own plane, but he flies on planes, drives cars, his own car, and all of those things without hands, without arms. Now, he could be someone who sits in a wheelchair and someone had to feed him every day. And if he hadn't had the parents he had, that may well be where he was right now. But they did what they had to do to make sure that he was successful in life long term. And I think that's where many parents are falling down today. In the effort to make their child's life easier today, or really if you examine it deep down, in an effort to make your child like you today, because far too many parents today are trying to be their child's friend instead of their parent, they're crippling them in the future. Yes, in the short term, their child's life is easier, and probably they get through the day easier, and they even like each other a little more. But in the long term, I think the child's going to end up resenting them because they didn't do what they should have done to prepare them for life. That if you're allowing your teen to run amok in your house, if you are allowing their grades to slip, if you're allowing them to hang out with people they shouldn't be hanging out with, if they're not respecting the rules that you used to have for your house, you need to get in their face. You need to say, hey, this isn't okay. There are rules, there are standards, and you're expected to meet them. And they're probably going to yell and scream and get angry with you in the short term. But if you do it long enough, in the long term, your team will not only love and respect you, but they'll appreciate you a lot more. And so the question is not, will my teen change their behavior? Will my child ever figure out how to be a grown-up? The real question is, are you going to be enough of a grown-up to put your foot down, to set a new standard, and to say, hey, this isn't okay? That's my challenge for you right now. I hope you're going to step up and do it. I'd love to hear what you think about this blog post. If you think I'm way out of whack, give it to me. But if you think deep down this is speaking to you, and you're nodding your head along with some of this video, then let me hear that too. I'm interested to see what the feedback is. If it's anything like it was based on what I spoke about here at a conference recently, people are itching for this message. But I'd like to hear what you think. Until next time, remember, don't live every day like it's your last day. Just be alive every day.